The body cam footage starts mid-sentence. A man is sitting in his car, hands on the wheel, window down. The officer is leaning in close, flashlight sweeping the back seat, and he says casually, almost like an afterthought, "You don't mind if I take a look, right?" And the driver, calm as you've ever seen a person, says 7 words. "I don't consent to a search, officer." What happens next is the reason this video has been watched millions of times, because the officer doesn't nod. He doesn't move on. His whole posture changes. He stands up straight, steps back from the window, and his voice drops to something that isn't friendly anymore. "All right. Step out of the car, now." The driver asks why. The officer doesn't give a reason. He reaches for the door. Within 60 seconds, the man is in handcuffs on the shoulder of a highway for saying a sentence the Constitution specifically guarantees him the right to say. That officer was fired, not suspended, fired. And the reason he was fired is the reason I'm making this video. Because what that driver did was textbook. And what the officer did in response, the retaliation, the invented authority, the escalation built on nothing, is exactly what happens when a trained professional meets someone who knows the one thing they were hoping he didn't. So today I'm going to show you exactly what the driver said, why it was legally bulletproof, and the single distinction that turns a consent trap into a moment where you're the one holding all the power. Stay with me, because understanding why the officer lost his career over this is how you make sure you never end up on the wrong side of the same encounter. I'm James Calloway. I spent 12 years as a criminal defense attorney across 3 states, and I watched good, innocent people consent to searches they never had to allow more times than I can count. Not because they were guilty, because they didn't know the word no was an option. This isn't legal advice. It's the plain English version of a right that has been yours since the Fourth Amendment was ratified, a right most people give away every single day without even knowing they had it. And let me be straight with you before we go further. Most police officers, the vast majority, would have heard that driver's refusal, nodded, and moved on. What happened on that body cam is not normal, but the reason it went viral is that everyone watching it felt the same thing in their gut. That could have been me, and they were right. So let me show you the law that was sitting underneath that entire encounter. Under the Fourth Amendment, you are protected from unreasonable searches. For an officer to search your vehicle, he needs one of 2 things: probable cause, a real, articulable reason to believe evidence of a crime is inside the car, or your consent, your permission. And here is the truth that changes everything once you hear it. A consent search is the single most common type of vehicle search performed in this country. Not because officers always have probable cause, because people keep saying yes. They say yes because the question doesn't sound like a question. "You don't mind if I take a look" owns like a formality, like something you'd be strange to refuse. And that's the entire design. It's built to feel like the answer is already yes before you've opened your mouth. But it is a question, and the answer can be no. And no is not a crime, not an obstruction, not evidence of guilt, and not on its own a reason for the officer to do anything at all. So let me walk you through how consent is actually manufactured at the roadside, because once you see the mechanics, you can never be caught by them again. The first move is the casual ask. "Mind if I have a quick look?" Notice the phrasing. It's not, "I'm going to search your vehicle." That would be a statement of authority. It's a request wrapped in friendliness, designed so that refusing feels socially awkward. And here is the permission paradox that sits at the center of every one of these encounters. If the officer already had probable cause, he would not be asking. He'd be telling you he's searching the car. The fact that he's asking is very often the clearest signal that he cannot search without your help. The question is the tell. The second move is the guilt frame. If you've got nothing to hide, why not just let me look? This is engineered to make your refusal feel like a confession. It isn't. Exercising a constitutional right is not evidence of anything. A court cannot treat your polite no the way it would treat an admission. But in the moment, standing on the side of a road with a flashlight in your face, it doesn't feel that way. It feels like saying no is the thing a guilty person would do. That feeling is the trap. And the third move, the one the officer in that viral video used, is the punishment pivot. The moment you say no, the tone changes. Suddenly you're told to step out. Suddenly there's a new urgency. Suddenly the officer is reaching for authority he didn't have 30 seconds ago. And the purpose is simple: to make you regret saying no, to make the next person in your seat think twice before they try it, to teach you, through discomfort, that refusing has a cost. But here is what the officer in that video didn't understand. and it's the reason he's no longer wearing a badge. Retaliating against a citizen for exercising a constitutional right is not a gray area. It is a violation, and when it's captured on a body camera, in high definition, with audio, it is the clearest possible evidence that the officer crossed a line the law draws in permanent ink. That driver's calm refusal didn't just protect him, it created the record that ended a career. So here is the sentence, and I want you to learn it like your own name. I don't consent to any search, officer. Am I free to go? That's the whole thing. Let me show you what each half does. I don't consent to any search, closes the door. Clearly, calmly, on the record. If they search anyway, they are doing it without your permission. And every second of that search now has to be justified by probable cause they can articulate. If they had it, they didn't need your consent. If they didn't, your refusal just exposed it. Am I free to go? Forces the legal status of the encounter into the open. Either you are being detained, which requires reasonable suspicion of a crime, or you are free to leave. There is no middle ground where you simply have to stand there, because the officer is unhappy with your answer. Let me make this real. 2 drivers, same highway, same evening, same officer. The first, a man named David, hears, "You don't mind if I take a look?" and says what most people say. "Yeah, sure. I've got nothing to hide." 15 minutes later, his car has been searched, top to bottom. Nothing was found. But his evening is gone. His details are in a system, and there's a search record with his name on it that didn't need to exist. He handed over a right he didn't have to. Second driver, same question. "You don't mind if I have a look?" "I don't consent to any search, officer. Am I free to go?" A pause. The officer looks at him, and then, "Yeah, drive safe. Same highway, same innocent person, same question. The only difference was one sentence." Now the officer is not always going to let it go, so let me walk you through it. First push. Why not? What are you hiding? You don't take the bait. You don't explain yourself. You repeat, warmly, "I'm not hiding anything. I just don't consent to searches. Am I free to go?" Same tone, same calm. Repetition is your armor. Second push. "All right, step out. I'm going to bring a dog around." Now there are limits on this. The Supreme Court has ruled that an officer cannot extend a traffic stop beyond its original purpose to conduct a dog sniff without independent reasonable suspicion. So if your stop was for a broken tail light and that's been dealt with, holding you there for a K9 requires a new legal justification. You say, "I don't consent to any search, and I don't consent to extending this stop. Am I being detained?" You've put both boundaries on the record in one sentence. Third push. The search happens anyway. The officer claims probable cause, or doesn't claim anything at all, and begins searching. You do not resist. You do not grab. You do not block. You say once, clearly, "I don't consent to this search," and then you let it happen. Because here is the rule that governs everything. You comply on the roadside. You win it later. An unlawful search challenged calmly, on camera, with a clear verbal refusal, is exactly the search that gets evidence thrown out, complaints sustained, and officers disciplined. But only if you stayed calm enough to let the record speak for you. That is exactly what the driver in that viral video did. He didn't fight. He didn't shout. He said his sentence. He let the officer make his choice. And the body camera captured every frame of a career ending in real time. His calm was the weapon, and knowing precisely when to speak, when to stay silent, and how to turn a bad officer's overreach into a record that holds him accountable is the reason I put together a short, plain English guide to your rights in any encounter with law enforcement. It's called the Know Your Rights Guide, and it covers every common scenario: the roadside, your front door, on foot, and on your phone, so the right words are in your head before the lights ever appear. I'm not going to give you a hard sell. If this has been useful, the link is in the description whenever you want it. So let me bring it home. To search your car, an officer needs probable cause, or your consent. If he's asking, he very likely doesn't have the first one, so never hand him the second. "I don't consent to any search. Am I free to go?" is not rude. It is not suspicious. It is not an admission. It is a constitutional right, spoken out loud in a calm voice. And it is the single sentence that separates the driver who loses his evening from the driver who keeps it. The people who drive home from these encounters are not the ones who argued, and they're not the ones who handed over every right they had, because a friendly question made it feel awkward to say no. They're the calm ones, the ones who said one sentence, held it quietly, and let the officer decide what kind of stop this was going to be. That driver on the body cam? He was one of them. Now you are too. If this helped, send it to one person you care about who drives. Because someone you know is going to hear that question one night. And the difference between a ruined evening and a 2-minute stop is whether they knew this before the window came down. Subscribe because every week I break down one more of these in plain English, so the next time it's you sitting there, you already know your rights better than the person testing them. I'm James Calloway. Know your rights. They can't take what you don't give.